Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nitinamine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. In this session, we continue to discuss from the 26th verse of the 18th chapter, the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is part 2 of the discussion on the 26th verse. The previous session also we discussed the same verse. We continue discussing this. I was explaining in the previous session the three states of consciousness. The three states of consciousness out of the four. Totally we can be, as a living being, spirit, soul, we can have four states of consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. So I can be conscious in the wakeful state, like present state, all of us are now. You are awake and you are conscious of everything external. And you have to some extent some internal awareness also, just like your breathing or your movement of the air inside your alimentary canal, etc., whatever. So that is wakeful state, normal state when you're awake. And then the sleeping state, there are two different states of consciousness in sleeping state, the dreaming and the unconscious state. This I explained in the previous session. And apart from these three, there is a fourth state of consciousness which is above the three states. That is what is described here, a state of trance, also called samadhi, also called the transcendental state of awareness. You are not just aware of the gross world, you are not just aware of the subtle world inside, or you are not just unconscious of the two, but you are conscious of yourself as the spirit soul and anything further beyond the awareness of yourself as spirit, something more, the spiritual dimension of reality, which is otherwise totally kind of unknown. In the wakeful state, the dreaming state and the unconscious state, that's called Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha and Sushupti Avastha, you are not aware about yourself as a spirit soul, you are not aware of any other spiritual reality. What are the other spiritual realities apart from yourself? Every person, every living being is a spirit soul. But when you see the person, you just see the body. At the most, you may recognize the person's state of mind. He is happy, he is sad, or he appears to be lost in some thought, etc., like that. So, or if the person is sleeping, you know he is sleeping. So he doesn't respond to what is happening in the outside world. So the person is either in dreaming state or unconscious state. But you are not aware of something called a spiritual state of consciousness or awareness that you do not know. We know only from the scriptures. So by practice of yoga, one can actually restrain the sense organs, the breathing, the mind and the intelligence, and situate oneself in the fourth state of consciousness, the highest state of consciousness. And this is possible only for human beings. And it is the state where you are spiritually aware. You're spiritually aware. So the Muni, Shamika Rishi, was in a spiritual state of consciousness. And in that state, what happens? He had achieved a transcendental position qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute. The Lord, the Supreme Lord Krishna, Supreme Absolute Truth, is always in the transcendental state of awareness or consciousness. Always. Eternally. He is always in that state. We, when we are in the material world, when we are in material contact, when we are materially conditioned, when we got this material body and we got a material desires, and we are interacting with material sense objects, material objects, then we are in the three lower states of consciousness. That's only for us, conditioned souls, living entities in this material world. It's not for living entities in the spiritual world. It is not for the Supreme Lord. Because that is inconsequential spiritually. Spiritually, it is not important. What are the happenings in this material world in terms of material interactions? That's not of any consequence spiritually. It's just like when you're dreaming, you are experiencing the dream in your sleep, but externally, is anything happening? What you're seeing in the dream? No, nothing is happening. The dream, you may either be happy or you may be sad. You may win some money or you may lose something else. But when you wake up, you say, oh, it was just a dream. So there is no loss, there is no gain. As far as your wakeful state is concerned, in the dream, whatever happens, there is neither any loss nor any gain. So that similarly, from the spiritual perspective, whatever happens in the material condition is actually not affecting the spiritual reality or the spiritual position. So we can say this material condition, whether somebody is awake or sleeping, the material condition itself is like spiritually ignorant, spiritually unaware, spiritually not conscious, not spiritually conscious. You can say materially conscious only. So the Muni had achieved a transcendental position in the same level as the Supreme Lord. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, it appears that the Muni in whose hermitage the king entered was in yogic trance. This is called yogic trance. Through practice of yoga, he had achieved this trance. The transcendental position is attained by three processes. There are three recognized processes for achieving this transcendental state of consciousness. What are the three processes? The process of jnana, the first process is called the process of jnana, or theoretical knowledge of transcendence, by study of the Vedic literature, by discussions, by study, deep study of the Vedic literatures describing this particular state of transcendental state of existence. Or the second process is the process of yoga. Yoga here refers to Ashtanga Yoga, specifically refers to Ashtanga Yoga. Or factual realization of trance by manipulation of the physiological and psychological functions of the body. Physiological condition function is all the external sense organs, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, etc. All those. Manipulate means restrain them from material activity. And psychological function of the body is thinking, feeling, willing, in terms of the use of the mind and the intelligence. So restrain the mind and intelligence from all kinds of material thoughts, material feelings, and material willing. The urge to do something material. Restrain that, the mind and the intelligence. And by doing so, one is able to actually rise above the three states of consciousness to the fourth state of trance. Turiya Avastha it's called. Turiya means actually, literally means the fourth state. The fourth state is the transcendental state of consciousness. And the third process for achieving this trance is the most approved process of Bhakti Yoga. And what is Bhakti Yoga? Bhakti Yoga means engagement of senses in the devotional service of the Lord. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Now, Prabhupada explains that further. In the Bhagavad Gita also we have information of the gradual development of perception matter to a living entity. The Bhagavad Gita verses, Indriyani paranyahuhu, Indriyebhya param manaha, manasastu parabuddhi, yo buddhe paratastu saha. This towards the end of the third chapter, this verse in the Bhagavad Gita describes this 42nd verse of the third chapter. This verse says, the working senses are superior to dull matter. Working senses. And the mind is higher than the senses. Mind is above the senses. And the intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is higher than the intelligence. There is a hierarchy. The soul, below the soul is the intelligence, below the intelligence is the mind, below the mind is the senses, and below the senses is dull matter. So, Prabhupada explains that our material mind and body develop from the living entity, the soul, and being influenced by the three qualities of matter, we forget our real identity. Three qualities of matter, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamaguna, the influence of the material energy on the consciousness. We forget we are spirit soul. We are not aware. We forget ourselves, we forget Krishna, we forget all spiritual reality. The jnana process theoretically speculates about the reality of the soul. Jnana process, they keep on trying to eliminate all material varieties, all material things or material experiences or material awareness. They try to negate that. It's not spirit, it's not spiritual, this is not spiritual, that's not spiritual, etc. And then what is, if spirit soul is not this, not that, not this, not that, what it is, they speculate. They try to eliminate all the negatives and thereby try to postulate or theorize. Therefore, it is a theoretically arriving at the reality of the soul. But Bhakti Yoga factually engages the spirit soul in activities. Bhakti Yoga is not speculation. It is actual engagement of the senses in the devotional service of Krishna. Just like chanting Hare Krishna. You actually vibrate your tongue and produce the sound Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And you hear the sound Hare Krishna through your ears. And you do so by engaging a sense of touch in counting on japa beads. So engaging the senses, the sense of speaking, the sense of hearing and the sense of touch. Three senses, you engage in a definite activity called chanting japa. And that is a spiritual activity. So engaging the spirit soul in activities, spiritual activities, that is the Bhakti Yoga process. The perception of matter is transcendent to still subtler states of the senses. Just like normally when we see something, We just aware of that object we are seeing. We are not conscious that through my eyes I am seeing the object, and through my sense of understanding or knowing, I am perceiving that object to be something. So we are not aware of that. When we become aware of the whole process of seeing, just like if somebody is looking at a distance in a desert when they're walking, they see at a distance there is a body of water. That may not be a body of water, because when they approach that, there is no body of water. It appears like at a distance of some 50 feet there is a body of water. But when they cross 50 feet while walking, there was no body of water. It looked like there was a body of water. That's called a mirage. It's an optical illusion. So that optical illusion, when they become aware of that, then they become aware of the defectiveness or the limitation of this sense of seeing. Like the sun, when it is rising, you look in the horizon, if you're able to see the sun, it will appear a disk this big, that's all. That's all it will appear, this big a disk. But is the sun that big? No, it's an optical illusion. So this way, you transcend the matter to perceive the senses. The senses you transcend to subtle mind, and mind to the intelligence, and intelligence to ultimately realize the soul. So this is the process, and the Muni was sitting in that particular state of trance. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.